Joe Elliott, you just released your new album 10. How do you feel now? Is it as exciting as it used to be to release new albums?
Yeah, I don't think it ever goes away. You know, I mean, I don't have any children, but I know people that, you know, they have their fifth or their sixth child and they're as excited about it as their first one. And I guess it's a very similar thing, you know. I mean, we've created a piece of art that we kind of worked very hard on for 8-9 months. And of course it's exciting, you know. I mean, we got into this business to make records, to go on tour, to do TV, to, you know, play, being the pop star kind of thing. And I mean, that our generation of kids grew up on things like Top of the Pops and T-Rex and Mark Bolan and David Bowie and what have you, and the whole look as well as the actual music. But that excitement that got us into this in the first place never really went away, and there's no reason why it ever should. We're very aware that this is a very cutthroat business, but, you know, there's ways around it. You know, it's a minefield, but as long as you know where the mines are and you don't step on them, you're fine. And we kind of know all the trappings, so we can just get on with enjoying it, you know.
Your new material is obviously softer than your first album. Is that a natural progression for you?
I get confused when people say softer. There's 3 ballads on this album. Out of 13 tracks, which means that there's 10 songs that aren't. I think you have to listen to the album more than once or twice. You know, when you say softer, yeah, there's no way that it's as heavy as High and Dry or anything like that, because we just, you know, that was us when we were 19 years old. Yeah. To us, it's that, if anything, High and Dry is a bad example of an album that we made that really wasn't what we were going, where we wanted to go. That was much more Pete Willis's riffs and stuff like that. And then when Pete wasn't around anymore, the thing came back to the way me, Sav, and Steve always saw it, which was a lot more chordal rather than riffy, which is why we started writing songs like Photograph, which were like pop songs done on guitars. And I think that, you know, if you listen to Hysteria onwards, that's when we actually decided, you know, that's when we really thought that we had our direction down, because the one thing that Pyromania didn't have was like a really cool ballad or something like that. Foolin' was nearly a ballad, but it was actually not a ballad at all. And we like doing the slow stuff, you know. And I hate the word ballad because it gives wrong connotations. But, you know, a song like Don't Give Up by Peter Gabriel and Kate Bush wouldn't even be called a ballad. It's just a slow song. You know, with Hysteria we had Love Bites and you know, with Adrenalize we had Tonight and Have You Ever Needed Someone So Bad and so forth. So I don't really see it being that much different, you know. I think the difference is that there isn't a song on this album that's the kind of joke song, like Let's Get Rocked or Rock of Ages. There isn't really one of them on the album. It's a little darker than that, you know. People have said to us over the last few months, you know, this is like a love album, isn't it? You know, of course it's a soft one. And I was like, no, it's not, actually. There's as much, lyrically, there's as much hate, there's as much envy, there's as much greed, and there's as much darkness as there is love. But when somebody listens to a rock album, they instantly expect everything to be very meaty. And they expect everything to be very macho, and that, you know, all the lyrics are going to be, we're going to rock this town tonight kind of stuff. And, you know, once you've done that once, you can't do it twice. So, consequently, with things like Scar, you can hear echoes of September the 11th in it. And when you listen to Cry, it's about you know, drug addiction. It's about, and you listen to Gravity, and it's about paranoia. The whole lyrical thing on this record is very much about the human emotion. It's about situations that aren't necessarily familiar to everybody, but somewhere somebody can hear one of his lyrics and say, he's singing about me, or he's singing about my brother, or he's singing about us if it's a couple, you know. And that's what we've tried to touch on. So musically, we've tied moods with lyrics, you know. It's like if there's a song we got a lyric that's very dark, we put dark kind of music with it. We got an up lyric, we'll put very uplifting music with it, like, say, Every Day, or you know, You're So Beautiful. You know, I don't necessarily think it's soft. I just think it's just a different form of rock. I mean, in comparison to Linkin Park and Korn, yeah, it is. But in comparison to our past works, if you listen to Cry and Scar and Four Letter Word, they're as rocking as anything we've done in the last 15 years. You start to write songs and you start caring less about the bracket that people put you in. I mean, we don't and never have been, I don't think, a heavy metal band. We really haven't. I mean, we've done the odd, Stage Fright is a heavy metal song. High and Dry is kind of riffy, but, I don't even believe AC/DC are a heavy metal band because they're too blues-based. And High and Dry is very much in the AC/DC vein of things. But, we've had this argument so many times in the past about who we are and where we belong in the music, pigeonhole department that we're always getting put in. But if you took Scott Ian and Steve Harris and Lemmy and asked them if Def Leppard were a heavy metal band, they just laugh at you and say no. It wouldn't necessarily mean that they don't like us, but it's just categorization is wrong. We're not a reggae band either. But we like reggae. We're not a heavy metal band, but we like some metal, But we also like the idea of being a rock band like the Rolling Stones or like Oasis, where it's just like, or U2, where they're allowed to have a drum kit and a bass and loads of guitars, but nobody calls them metal. And I think we fall much more into that category of just being a rock band than we ever did a metal band. The categorization I find has always been slightly out of whack.
Some critics claim that your new album is your new Hysteria. What's your comment on that? Well,
I think that's their simplistic way of saying if all the stars are in alignment, there's 4 or 5 or 6 hit singles on it, which is what a lot of people have said. My take on it is that, yeah, it is, because by virtue of the fact that Hysteria had 6 hit singles, it was a pop record. Because pop being short for popular, they had songs that were in the top 10, and they were standing neck and neck with Madonna and Prince and Michael Jackson at that time of its, release. With this record, if we have top 10 hits, we're going to be standing neck and neck with the Backstreet Boys and Britney Spears and as well as, Linkin Park and all the rock stuff that's around. Back then it was GNR and Van Halen. This time round it would be Nickelback and Creed or whoever, But yeah, I mean, it's a pop record. We've made a pop record, with songs like Every Day, You're So Beautiful, even the up-tempo stuff, it's got a pop element about it. But we always have had. You see, to the untrained ear, you can take a song like Larger Than Life by the Backstreet Boys. It's a Def Leppard song with the guitars taken off, right? So to anybody that's been around for a long time, they can hear Backstreet Boys and go, it sounds like Def Leppard. And then somebody that hasn't been around for a long time will hear us doing a song that genuinely belongs in our set, and they'll go, it sounds like the Backstreet Boys. Because they took the whole vocal thing from us, which is what's always separated us from the other bands that just did the rock thing with the vocal and the odd harmony. We really went intricate on the backing vocals. We really wrote them in as all part of the arrangement,
I bet there were some reactions when it was announced that you were going to work with producers that previously had been working with Britney Spears and the Backstreet Boys.
Well, in the media, yeah. I mean, I haven't actually had any direct conversations with any of our fans about it, but they, the few that I have read, they seem to care less about it than the media does. But, the obvious response is like, who cares? I mean, these guys are producers and songwriters, and what they do is they write and they work with whoever they feel that they can actually contribute something to. Andreas Carlton and Per Anderheim are a couple of Swedes who grew up in the 80s listening to bands like Def Leppard and Kiss and Dio, but they got their break in pop music. So then they get the opportunity to work with Def Leppard because Andreas spends a lot of time in LA and he was hanging out with Phil, who lives in LA, and that's how that relationship forged. But as many people as you think maybe like going, bit of a weird one, that, some of these people are the same ones that are asking us, why don't you work with Mutt anymore?
Yeah.
And then we point out to them, well, would you like to know who Mutt's been working with for the last 2 or 3 years? and you reel off Shania Twain, Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, and Celine Dion. That's who Mutt's been producing for the last 3 or 4 years. Exactly the same artist as Andreas Carlsson. So what you've got is a guy that's crossing over from rock into pop, and we've caught a guy who's crossing over from pop into rock. And Andreas, since he works with us, has been working on the Bon Jovi album. So this guy is moving much more into the rock field.
Right. You brought in different producers this time instead of just using one.
Yeah.
How come?
Well, towards the end of the last tour, we kind of sat down and said we thought it'd be interesting to mix it up a little bit. And before we kind of got stale of working in the same studio with the same producer, let's use Pete again, because we like working with Pete. He's good. But we wanted to work with maybe 4 or 5 or 6 different producers, just for the challenge of changing it around a bit, to see what different ingredients that a different person in the room would add to what we do, naturally. That 6 got narrowed down to 4 people, basically, which was Andreas and Per, Pete Woodruff, and Marty Fredriksson. So, there were some people that we couldn't get hold of. There were some people that were suggested to us that we didn't want to work with. And no doubt there were some people that we wanted to work with us that didn't want to work with us. We didn't take it that far. Once we got started with Marty, that set us off, because the first thing we did on the record was Now.
Yeah.
And then we were doing She's So Beautiful straight away. And we actually wrote every day in the studio while we were doing the other 2 songs. We weren't due to do a 3rd song with Marty. It just happened. It came together in like one day. So it was very exciting to write a song that quickly and get it recorded over the next couple of days. So the Andreas thing, again, it came up through just, connections. It was just Phil knowing Andreas and us looking for producers, and Andreas being a producer. It was logical that Phil was going to go out to some restaurant with him and say, listen, do you want to produce a song on the album? To which he'd say yes, and then, 6 weeks later he says, listen, I've got this song which sounds like you guys. Do you want to hear it? We heard it, and we loved it. And we said, yeah, it's great. We go over to Stockholm, we're there for 3 days. What have we got to lose? If we don't like it, we can throw it away.
Sure.
Because it didn't take a long time to do. This whole album took us like 8 months in comparison to other records. That's extremely fast. That's actually the 3rd fastest record we've ever... It's the fastest record since High and Dry.
Yeah. You're not very well known for pushing your albums. Why does it take so long? Does it take that long to write the music, or do you spend so much time in the studio, or do you simply enjoy having time off?
Well, no. I mean, time off is something that we don't really ever have. What you're looking at here is you're looking at the release dates of these records. You can go from 83 to 87. What people seem to forget is that we were on tour for 18 months. So that takes you into halfway through 1984. Do you know what I mean? And the same with the last record. It's 3 years since Euphoria came out, but we were still touring up to March 2001. Now, we started recording this album in July, so we had April, May, and June for everybody to be at home with their family, because, everybody in the band except me has got kids now, so they need to spend some time at home.
Sure.
Do the family thing, There was only 3 months between the last gig of the last tour and us starting this album. And then we finished recording it in April.
Right, so you're working hard.
Yeah, we like I said, in 20-odd years, we've never had any time off. What we have had is a lot of downtime where there'd be one person in the studio and 4 people playing pinball. Yeah. Because of the way that we made records in the 80s.
Yeah.
But it's not, with the Pro Tools and all that's available in studios now, where you record it straight to disc. There's no rewind, there's no fast forward, there's no tape mangling. It makes life a lot easier. Technology has finally caught up with our way of thinking,